Now that we've gotten into the nuts and bolts of what performance assessment is, it's time to look at how we actually get the standards into performance expectations. To get started, you first of all have to get to your standards. And that's a little harder than it might seem at first. Some districts use the state standards, others use the nationalized standards that are now being delivered as a core state standards. But you can do search engine query and put state curriculum standards and your specific state afterwards if you're doing that, or the national specific ones by just typing in the Common Core standards, and you'll get a pretty good list, pretty extensive list of the available state standards. So we click the link there right off the page. It's going to take us out to that state standards, and you can see right here we have quite a few. In my case, I am in Michigan, so I could type in Michigan, and I will get the MDE's Curriculum and Standards Department. In this case, for this video, I've decided I'm going to actually use Common Core standards, which are nationalized standards that are pushing for mathematics and language arts. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at those standards. And then if I scroll down, I get lots of PDF documents. What you really want to use are the ones that are actually at the top here. I've decided for my activity with my 5 standards, I'm going to choose mathematics standards, just because there aren't a lot of performance assessments for mathematics. I'm teaching grade 5, and I'm going to be looking at something in the all too often scary fractions area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And what I get right here is a long list of all the ones that are available. I happen to know that my students have trouble in this domain, so I'm going to be going into the NF3 area, which is all about division and multiplication of fractions and using fractions carefully. We're only going to be taking a look at one of these, specifically NF3. 5 NF3. That's for 5th grade. And what we'll be doing with that is breaking it down. The numbers and operations part of the fractions is where the N and the F come from, and it's the third one in the set. So they have different naming sequences for all of these. None of that's important for what you need to do. What you really need to do is probably identify the 5 that you'd like. Now, if you choose 5 in a common area, kind of like I did here, I've chosen 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that I'll be building my rubric and my pieces for my performance assessment on. You can go ahead and just copy and paste these. You're not going to be borrowing them for work of any kind of attribution, and they are attributable to, of course, the federal government in this case. In this case, you could actually attribute them to the core standards that are being put out. But for our activity here, all we're going to do is copy and paste those, and then we're going to move them into a text editor. And the reason we want to do that is just to make it a lot easier to get access to these later. So once we've got them in the text editor, and we can actually see how long they are, they look pretty extensive. And I don't want that to scare anyone, that you can take care of this. We're going to actually breaking that down right now. I'm going to jump back into just again this one. We're just going to take a look at one on this lesson so you get an idea how we take all that text and turn it into a simple, easy to use performance objective. So let's our expectation. So we're only going to look at 5 NF3, and I know this looks kind of scary, but what we want to do is break this down into the expectation action, what we expect our students to do during the performance assessment that we can actually visually observe or quantify using our rubric. So we're looking just to break out the important parts of all this text. We're going to make this big giant text box very simple to work with. Let's go ahead and jump back here. So once we've identified what standard we've got to break it apart and get into the pieces we want to use. In this case, there's our big text box of standard. But we can go ahead and highlight the action parts. Interpret fractions as division of the numerator by the denominator. Gives us a nice little formula there. Then it says division of whole numbers. Again, we've got division twice. That tells us that that's the actual action we're expecting to see. They have put in fractions or mixed numbers under the answer. But I went ahead and highlighted the most important parts. By breaking those out, we can actually see that those are the important parts for what we're trying to do. Interpret fraction as division of the numerator by the denominator, and division of whole numbers, fractions or mixed numbers. The next step is to take what we've done and refine the standard. So there's all the text we had again, and if we refine it, make it a little easier to work with, we can rewrite that statement. Divide the numerator by the denominator in a fraction to find the correct answer. Now, it's not that the stuff that's in there isn't important. The other parts of this standard are very important. However, they're more about giving an example to a lay teacher who is not used to working in this curriculum area so that anyone could possibly teach this if they had enough examples. In this, you see there's a long example about how to do this problem and what kind of problems would be justified under this standard. The most important parts, though, are what the expectation is. So now that we've got an expectation, what we expect the student to be able to do, student will be able to take 14 divided by 3, turn it into 14 over 3. We can now restate the expectation. We expect them to divide the numerator by the denominator in a fraction to find the correct answer. We really want them to work out the problem and get an answer out of it. The performance expectation, therefore, would be compute division as a fraction to solve. We've taken divide and turned it into compute because that's the actual action. It's what we actually expect our students to do. And by providing a performance task, we'd actually be asking the students to do computation. And that computation is something we can actually check, verify, and validate once the students completed the work. So now when we take that 14 over 3, have an equal sign, we're looking for an answer instead of just an equality. And if the student's done everything right, they should come up with the correct answer. So that's breaking down performance expectations from state standards. You now know how to find and go get state standards, core standards from the national standards, and break those down into the most important components. If you need any more help, feel free to contact me at romwar2@fullsail.edu.